Welcome back, everybody, to These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For. Kevin Horde here.
Lorenzo here.
What up, buddy?
How's it going, man?
Another day, another... who knows what the hell's going on in the world.
Yeah, I've lost count of what day it is. As of recording, we're at the end of July, which I think I said this the last time we record. I don't know if we said it in the recording or not, but it feels just like yesterday when I was just hearing a constant barrage of fireworks outside of my window. And here we are at the end of July.
Yeah.
So it's weird.
Less than a week to go. It's
I know.
It's crazy.
I don't know what's going on with time anymore. Nothing matters.
Nothing
matters at all.
St. Louis announced today new regulations as far as business operation for COVID-19. So,
okay.
like they had relaxed a bunch of things, and then that wasn't working well. So they're tightening some things down. We'll see how that goes. I'm over across the river in another county, so we're a little behind the curve as far as doing anything about the pandemic situation. So
yeah,
I'm sure it's coming, but
yeah,
myself and my family have been pretty much operating the same since all of this started, so it doesn't necessarily affect us because we're still doing the same things that we have been.
Right.
Which anybody out there, I recommend you continue doing that. Don't necessarily pay attention to the leaders of your city if they're telling you everything's good.
Right. Things are not well.
Things are not. So
no. So yeah, stay safe as we've always said. But what are we actually here to talk about?
As usual,
updates.
We're here to talk about the Clone Wars. This particular week is Season 5, Episode 8, Bound for Rescue, written by Christian Taylor.
Yeah.
Directed by Brian Callen O'Connor. O'Connell. That is correct. Yeah. So this is part 3 of our little younglings arc, which I guess was written and slated to potentially be a spin-off series, and I think that you definitely get that feel from this episode.
Yeah, I definitely get the sense that they're trying to introduce these characters and their archetypes and how they the base relationship of these kids. But yeah, we can talk about more of that later.
Sure.
So
fortune cookie, I can't read my writing. What does it say? When we rescue others, we rescue ourselves.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I got nothing on this one.
I went straight up just Qui-Gon, and I kind of went back to something you were talking about maybe a couple of weeks ago. In the fact that Qui-Gon is kind of the more hippie grounded one, and more attuned to the actions of the self affecting the actions of others, right? So I think that he would definitely feel the connection of lending a hand to somebody else is also lending a hand to yourself, kind of full circle karma type deal.
Get that.
So
yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah, that's all I have for that. But our newsreel is a basic recap of last week, and more specifically the Hondo aspects of that. That's about all I got out of that one. You got any other notes on it?
This is pretty straight. Everything's straightforward so far. Yeah, they're basically just reestablishing the ties that Ahsoka has been captured by Hondo. That's everything you need to know going into this episode.
Yeah. So, excuse me. I got a burp stuck in my throat. Sorry about that. The episode proper just starts with the kids stuck on the ship, right? It is named. The ship is the Crucible.
Yes. Appropriate name. Yeah.
Sure. Trial by fire. Let's see. They put out a call for help, which I guess they're just kind of broadcasting across
open channels, I guess.
I guess.
Open Republic channels or Jedi channels, I guess. Or
I was wondering if it was Jedi specific or Republic specific. We don't have any indication that it's one or the other. Right. Their message is picked up by one Mr. Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he kind of lays out a plan of what's going to happen. We don't have any identification as to where he is, correct?
Not that I recall, no.
So he's just kind of out in space with like a fleet of ships, and he tells the younglings that he's going to send Cody over to pick him up, and then that they together, will go to Florum to rescue Ahsoka. Yes. And he basically just makes the assumption that Hondo went back home to Florum, because there's no identifying anything as to like where Hondo went. I feel like all of the where everyone is in this episode is out of pure convenience.
I will agree with that.
Right.
Because like there is a moment where Obi-Wan and Cody, they do pull up the screens and they get like some sort of indicator of the Crucible.
Okay.
And we just see it like in relation to nameless planets or planetary bodies of some sort. You know?
Like maybe he knows what system they're in or something.
Something like that. And my assumption was that they were close enough to Florum that it would make sense that Hondo would be there.
Well, so Florum is like where Hondo's base is. We've been to Florum before.
Right.
I just think it's bizarre that because they jumped to hyperspace. The kids did. Right?
Oh, you are right. You are correct. Yeah. At the end of the previous episode.
So,
and then that's when Ahsoka goes missing. Yeah.
So why would they go to the system of the pirate hangout?
Yeah, I got nothing on that. I completely forgot about that detail.
And then their ship is incapacitated, but Obi-Wan says like they're dangerously close to Florum. He basically says he's afraid that they're going to do exactly what they do in this episode. Right?
Right.
So it's geographically things are convenient because after that Skype call, during this time that Cody and Obi-Wan are talking, some separatist ships drop out of hyperspace, and then they are immediately immersed in full-fledged warship to warship space battle.
Yep. Immediately. And Kenobi even says like, "Yep, nope, Cody, you're busy now. Like, that's gonna have to wait. That rescue is gonna wait." So, yeah, it's a bizarre little turn of events, and like we even get to see some of the battle too. So like the episode kind of is like, "Hey, battles, let's go." Before getting to what I would call the A plot at hand, right?
Yeah, this we definitely get a kind of classic A plot B plot feel, which we haven't felt in a while. And not gonna lie, it was refreshing. You know, it kind of, for me anyway, it kind of got back to like this is like the way the Clone Wars used to function before it started taking itself like really seriously. You know, It was just kind of fun adventures.
Yeah.
A plot, B plot, part of it mattered, part of it didn't matter. You know, we've gone down that road and talked about that 100 times over by now. But it was reminiscent of the way things were before,
like season 1 and some of season 2.
Yeah, like before the Clone Wars kind of matured into the more serious show that it had become. Right,
for sure. Yeah.
So I was all right with that. Also, headcanon, I feel like, so we've talked about hyperspace travel before, you know, is it instantaneous? Is it not? You know, whatever. There's also a question of whether or not you can communicate while in hyperspace. Like sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So I like thinking that Obi-Wan was like in transit somewhere and then they got this like auditory beacon. He's like, oh, distress signal, we need to check this out. Drops out of hyperspace, talks to the kids, and this is how Grievous like locates him, and this is why Grievous drops out of hyperspace and starts this space battle.
Okay.
there's nothing that tells me that's what happened.
Right.
But if that were the case, I would like it more, and it would tie these two stories together, because the fact that we had these younglings lost, Obi-Wan picks up the distress call and then just gets ambushed, right?
Right.
The ambush comes out of nowhere. This entire space battle, as we go through this episode, because we cut to and from it 2 or 3 times, never really has any consequences.
Nope.
Save one, which we can get to later.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing is like the whole reason for the space battle. It doesn't necessarily fit into this episode, though.
Right.
So A plot would be the kids, right? And B plot is Obi-Wan. So after Obi-Wan's attacked, then we spend some time with the younglings. They're building their lightsabers, which I find intriguing. We definitely had a disagreement of how the lightsaber building process should go last week.
Right.
Whereby you were okay with the whole some random Padawan takes him to get crystals, and then there's this ancient droid that shows him how to, do this shit, right?
Yeah, like I didn't mind that it was a group activity, whereas you thought it was a more personal journey.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then here we see them all in the same room, but independently, like, doing this thing. And this is more of the way that I saw things, but guided by their personal Jedi Master, right?
Yeah.
And everybody seems to be doing all right with their engineering of these lightsabers. They don't need some droid looking over their shoulder telling them to read the directions. And
well, here's my question: is Huang still functional? Because R2 is putting them back together, but his eye sockets are lit up. But he doesn't say a single word throughout this episode.
I would say currently he is not functional.
Okay. So they're just using the will of the Force to try and put it together. Okay.
Correct.
I mean, I'm still down for that. So
I like that better than a droid telling them what to do.
I mean, I like them. I like either of them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I just the fact that the show is giving me both.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem with either route. Because I agree. Like, to go back to that, I don't think my issue isn't that like it should be Padawan and single master.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, I agree. Like, in my head, I also think that would be like the more personal developing way to go.
Right.
But what was presented to us
worked for you.
Yeah, I just have no problems with what was given to us as given, right?
Sure.
I don't think that discounts that other Jedi do have it the way that you would hope to see, you know? And like I said, I'm sure there's somewhere out there in the ever-growing expanded universe, even the fresh one,
right,
where that does happen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, like, for me, it's not like either or. I'm not going to take this as an either or situation, right?
Okay.
You can. You definitely can. But, yeah, like, for me, like, what happens in this episode in no way contradicts or undoes or is at odds with what happened last week, you know?
I agree with that.
You're right. So, I just found it interesting that of all characters, Katuni is the one that was unable to get her lightsaber functioning.
Yeah, so she gets it put together, and then she goes to fire it up, and it just kind of makes like a staticky noise. Mm-hmm. We do definitely get a corny line because Petro is the first one that gets his put together, right?
Right.
And fires it up, and he says, what does he say? He says, like, what do you think? And she goes, I think it looks like you put your lightsaber together.
Right.
And I was like, yep, that definitely just happened. Not sure that was necessary bit of dialogue. But she's very complimentary to him. She's, like, she's the person in the class that somebody else had completed their project and did a good job. And she's like, hey, way to go. And then they're like, let me see yours. And she's like, it's not really done yet. I'll just finish it later.
I'm getting there. That's basically what we get from her.
So I guess we have like 2 functioning lightsabers at this point. So that would be Petro's, and then that would be Gunji's.
I think Biff's is shown to be working too.
Do we see him? Oh, yeah, we do. We see him put his together as well. I forgot he was in the room.
So I think those... So we get 3 fully functioning sabers at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Petro, for whatever reason, says, hey, let's go rescue Ahsoka. And then, so they have a very brief disagreement and decide to make a democratic vote out of it. And there's 3 yays to Katuni's 1 nay. Mm-hmm. At this point, Zat and Gnodi come back in, which I didn't even realize that they weren't in the room.
Same. I did not realize that they were not in the room either.
But I guess they were up at the bridge checking things out.
Yep.
It's revealed that Gnodi, not at this point, a little later, it's revealed that Gnodi is the only one that's had any flight training. So I guess she's kind of in charge of the operations of the ship. Mm-hmm. And then Zat, we know, does machines like Donatello. So he's probably overseeing, the readouts and whatnot. Zat says that the ship is leaking. He says it's venting or something.
Yeah, venting coolant.
Yeah.
So that I did not understand. It was definitely just
it made it sound, whatever he said made it sound like they were going to run out of air. But then somebody is like, what does that mean? And he goes, it means it's venting coolant, so we have to land and just shut the engines off and turn the engines back on.
Well, so I agree with your first. I agree with your first point. They say they're leaking coolant, and then they even point out that if they don't fix it, the ship will blow up.
Yeah,
they're pretty explicit about that. So that they set the stakes pretty explicitly, and that they will have to land the ship so that it can reset.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, so it has to reset and the ship has to cool down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like, they don't really need to fix anything. They just need to give the ship a chance to not float in the hard vacuum of space, I guess.
Yeah, so my guess is that it is something to do with like the recirculatory air system, and then this means that the engines have to work overtime, which is going to overheat them, which will then in turn lead to the bombad boom boom, right? So they need to land the ship but the whole thing of let the system reset, like they literally just have to land and like unplug the computer and plug it back in, and then everything's going to be good. Doesn't necessarily fall in line with that.
No.
It's not explored any more than that. This is just a reason for Petro essentially to get his way. So they're going to head planet side, and even the Wikipedia page says this forces them to land on the nearest planet, which happens to be Florum. Like, it even points out that, wow, what a coinky dink, geographically, everything is a coincidence here.
How fortuitous, like, that this all just happened to work out.
Right. So they do. They head down to Florum, right? But then we get a little cutscene, I guess you could call it, where we have Ahsoka and Hondo have an interchange. Ahsoka straight up says, hey, the Republic doesn't pay ransom, and if you turn me over to the Separatists, then they're just going to double cross you and kill both of us. What's the point of that? So why don't you just let me go? She says it'd be foolish for you not to let me go. And he says something to the effect of, no, that would be less profitable.
Right.
He's driven by money, man.
It's all driven by profits, man. The man wants his coaxium, all right?
He does want his coaxium.
Like I said, it is burned in my head that this man wants the goddamn coaxium, all right?
Yep.
Like, I haven't been to Disneyland since start of March, all right? But I can still hear it echoing in my head. Get the coaxium. Good job. That's one coaxium. Now, after another one.
It's because you're not getting the coaxium anymore, man. Hondo's been yelling at you in your sleep.
He's just haunting me in my sleep to get that coaxium.
Is it at this point, or is it later when Hondo kind of reveals his plan of what he's going to do with Ahsoka? It's at this point,
I believe
right?
it's right here. I believe it's right here.
He says, I've decided not to go with the Separatists because for some reason Dooku holds a grudge against me for that one time that I held him hostage. It's so funny the way that he's doing this.
Right.
It's just so Hondo over the top and I can't believe he would hold a grudge against me for that one time I held him hostage. But he says he's decided to go with somebody much more nefarious and criminal than even he is, a businessman who is willing to pay handsomely. Who's he talking about?
I don't know.
I think he's talking about Maul. I think so. I think by now Maul has kind of started to build his criminal syndicate, right?
Right.
And I'm pretty sure he's talking about Maul.
I didn't think about that. I honestly just went with the obvious, Jabba.
I don't think Jabba would care about buying a Jedi, though.
I agree. That's why I was just that one doesn't make sense to me.
Especially because the last biggest interaction that we had with Jabba himself would have been when the Jedi helped save his son and revealed to him that Dooku was behind everything and being a dick.
Right. So, yeah, I think you're correct. I would say, though, that it seems quick to get any sort of syndicate together. But, I mean, I guess this is a dude who's been floating around for 10 years plotting revenge. So,
yeah,
it still sounds weird that at this point, he's even the bare... even printing business cards at this point sounds like an odd
fair enough
progression.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I agree,
fair enough.
I agree with your assessment that Maul would be the only person that makes sense to care to get a hands on a Jedi.
Right.
But
unless it's Darth Sidious. But
yeah, maybe.
I think classifying him as a businessman is a little bit not right.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. But yeah, it's hard for me to think that at this point Maul has started making any of those sorts of contacts. And
do you remember exactly where we left him?
That was when Obi-Wan and him were fighting on somewhere, and then they blasted off, and Savage, I think, was like, why don't we go after him? I was like, no. We got time. Patience. Right. I waited for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other person I'm thinking of would be Prince Gizor or whatever his name is, the green dude with the ponytail on his head. We see him. He is seen in season 7. One of those in the hologram where you also see what's his face from Solo, right?
Yeah. Oh god. Name is blank from my head now.
Yeah. Me as well. I'm thinking Beckett, but not Beckett, not Woody Harrelson.
Not Beckett.
Right. Anyway,
Paul Bettany is all I got. So
yeah. So I think that
talking about Voss Dryden. Dryden Voss.
Yep.
Dryden Voss.
I think that he is seen in the same hologram scene as that, or it could be something else, and it was an unreleased something that I'm thinking of. I look forward to figuring that out later. But he was like a Black Sun Syndicate guy in the old EU.
Mm-hmm.
So even though like his name is never spoken, like his visage is shown, and it's like one of those things that like old EU nerds would be able to point out, but to everybody else it's a 2-second hologram that nobody would care about. Right. That's like the only other person that I can think of that would fit this quote businessman who would pay handsomely for a Jedi, especially a female Jedi, dead or alive.
Right.
Hondo is definitely quick to tell Ahsoka that her life really doesn't matter to him, but it's the inconvenience of dealing with her dead body,
right,
that is what is keeping her alive. And I don't know if he's being 100% serious, but he just like he has that vibe, right? Just like that gooey, greasy vibe of anything goes, and like it's anything is inconsequential. He doesn't matter as long as he's getting his money. He's like
definitely he's the most piratey that we've seen him in these couple of episodes. And it's definitely all a part of him, but this is definitely the sleaziest version of a pirate that we see him.
Yeah, for sure. I like Pirate Hondo. We cut away from him for a little bit. We've actually kind of bled into like the next part that we see Florum and Hondo. So, I don't think all of this stuff is 100%
in order
anyway. And we do go A plot, B plot, A plot, B plot, whatever. And then, I mean, I guess like Hondo falls under A plot, even though it's like not the kids, but
it's like A plot sub A plot.
Yeah. So we cut back.
At some point, we cut back to B plot too, where we pick up on more of the fighting. With Obi-Wan, somewhere in this mix of things, where, because this sort of plays into why the children are making the decision they do as well, where they're like, hey, well, our rescuers are taking too long. Then at some point we do cut back to what's going on with Obi-Wan, and that's when we get the reveal that Grievous has showed up.
Yeah.
Like that isn't revealed immediately, but I think like in the second or so scene.
And these are all only like 2-minute scenes. It's like we get 2 minutes of this, 2 minutes of that, 2 minutes of another thing, and then 2 minutes, and then just kind of looping round and round. It's like a round robin of A plot, B plot, C plot.
Yeah. Like, oh, we're just going to pick up here. Yeah, it's not like one leads into the other. It's more of like, oh, let's take a chance to see what's happening over here. So like we get a little bit more dogfighting with the space battle. And then this is when
Cody and Obi-Wan are like still in like the battle room or whatever, like watching the holograms, and somebody says that the droids are sending landing parties out or something, and it's at this point that Obi-Wan says we need to head to the main hangar to win this battle or whatever. And so they run down there, and Grievous and some other droids land, and then there's fighting in the ship. Grievous ends up like throwing this clone around and murdering him in front of everybody, and Obi-Wan does not take that well. Hey, you're gonna pay for that. And then of course we cut away for a while, and we get more of the Hondo stuff, some of which we already talked about, and then we cut back to Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan orders a retreat. And Cody's like, no, we can't give up now. Like, we'll lose the ship. And Obi-Wan says, hey, the ship's already lost. We need to realize that the way to save the most is by giving up the ship. And then orders an abandoned ship for everybody, and says, like, let's head for the hills. We're going to the escape pods.
Yep.
And they jettison and self-destruct the ship.
Yes.
So this is what I think the entire point of this space battle is. So that Obi-Wan Kenobi no longer has his good guy Star Destroyer, right? We're starting to move Obi-Wan into just single Jedi Starfighter to get him closer to where he needs to be at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, because he and Anakin show up at the beginning of Revenge. They don't have their Jedi Star Cruisers, like their good guy Star Destroyers, and these fleets of fucking clones behind them that they've had this entire war.
Right.
We're starting to pare this stuff down to be able to fit in where they're going to be in the future. That's what I think it is.
I can see your point. It's just that this is a weird place to do it.
It's a very weird place to do it.
It's a weird place to do it. It's a weird way to do it.
It has nothing to do with the actual plot of the episode. This episode is like, hey, we need help. Obi-Wan's like, hey, we'll help you. Oh, we can use this time to like start trimming stuff down. And Obi-Wan's stuff happens completely autonomous from the actual plot of the episode, which is younglings go to rescue Ahsoka.
Yeah, because then by the time B plot ends, it just ends with them in the escape pod, and they're just like, hey, those kids are on their own, but there's no way that they can inform the children or anything. So, and with A plot already moving on its own, it's just, I would have felt better if they had played out the entire Obi-Wan bit first, then he gets a message out to the children like, hey, shit's gone bad here. You guys are on your own. You know, you guys have to hold out for a second. And then that's what leads Petro to make his decision. Rather, at this point, to me, Petro is still just like an annoying little twat. You know?
Yeah, because it's like there's the initial Skype call, and then they hang up. Obi-Wan's attacked, but the kids don't know it. And then like the next scene we see is the kids building their lightsabers, and then Petro's like, welp. We gotta have our lightsabers because our rescuers obviously aren't coming. Let's go save Ahsoka.
Because then, back to that scene, there is a good point too, where Petro's like, they treat us like children. Katuni's like, we are children.
We are children.
Yeah, like what? That's the point. So, if this really was a backdoor pilot, these were not the characters to put in front of us, because I would not. Okay, real talk. Like, I already wasn't watching this show, and if they were gonna introduce a show that had Petro involved in any way, he is not the character to get me on board. Okay. Not even close. Like, not even in the idea of like, well, we need a dickish character to like have him have room to grow.
I'm wondering if the thought behind this was that the Clone Wars show had grown a little bit more mature, and they wanted to kind of dial that back to like re-bring in that younger audience. So like every 3 or 4 years, you like do a soft reboot on.
You're aging out.
Yeah. Like some kids are aging up, so you keep those stories going, but then you do a little soft reboot with like a new group, you know, the next generation, to pull the little bit younger kids in. You know what I mean?
Like, here's the point I would have appreciated is like, I wouldn't have minded a Jedi Temple focused series, right?
Okay.
Like, I wouldn't have minded a Jedi Academy television series, right?
Okay.
Just not with this crew. Like, I would have loved to have seen like what the day-to-day is like of a Padawan. And like the comics cover some of this pretty well, you know?
Yeah.
We get like the canon comics kind of get into some of this. Pretty much any Jedi that survives Order 66, we always get like some sort of flashback to what their life was like at the Jedi Temple.
Right.
And I would love to have a show focused on that, you know?
That's a good point.
So, and there's a way to do that with characters that are flawed, because, you know, you don't start off with the perfect character. But there are ways to create flawed characters that also are not annoying.
Okay.
Know? And Petro to me is beyond annoying.
If it wasn't for Petro, would you enjoy this sextuplet a little more.
Yeah. Like, I really do enjoy all the other characters. Like, I really like Katuni. I like the Donatello sort of character.
Right.
Little Wookiees are always a joy, you know?
Yeah.
So, but, like, Petro is such... he's a character that was written with, like, the broadest of pens, right? So, that's the problem. It's just like... he is the jock character that a main character is supposed to hate.
Right.
And then, like, the main character will turn into friends with the jock character. Like, that's where he's supposed to kind of be set.
Right. So if this was live action, it would be Channing Tatum playing 10-year-old Petro.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Well, okay, so, like, if this was a live action TV show, basically Petro would be Luke on the OC, and Katuni would be Ryan, the outsider that comes in, and Petro's like, I'm the cool Jedi, and then, like, knocks down Katuni and, like, bullies Katuni, but then, like, at some point Petro gets in trouble and Katuni still helps him out, and Petro's like, why did you help me? I thought you hated me because I bullied you. And then that's when they become best friends and Petro stops being a fucking asshole, you know?
Is this just like Space Saved by the Bell? Is that what we're watching right now?
This is essentially what this would be, yeah. So, yeah, because then, like, Zat would be your Screech, essentially. Like,
yeah, Zat would be Screech, and then
Petro
Gunji would be Mario Lopez, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so, then, yeah. I don't know who Biff would be. I don't have that one locked down.
Yeah, I don't know. But, like,
who's the girl in Showtime?
In Showgirls?
Showgirls?
That was, names, that's, shit.
So Katuni would be Kelly Kapowski.
Yeah.
I don't even know how I remember all these names.
Yeah, your memory is way better than mine. Mine is falling apart, obviously, right now.
I am just a little older than you are. While you're looking into that,
Jesse Spano. That's right. Jesse Spano, because all I remember from that is the I'm so excited uppers bit.
Yeah.
Because, like, every 80s and 90s show had, like, on this very special episode of Saved by the Bell, Jesse Spano starts taking drugs. But to this point, have you ever seen this side note? There was a YouTube series called Zach is an Asshole or something like that.
I have not seen that.
Oh my God. So they were a show that, I don't know if they went episode by episode, but they would, I've seen a couple of them, and the episodes they would cover a whole episode within an episode of this Zach is an Asshole. Zach Morris is an asshole, right?
Right.
And as they would cover and review the episode, but really hardcore analyze what Zach is exactly doing
and why he is an asshole.
Right. But it'd be things that, like, in the 90s would be passed off as, like, jokes, like, oh, Zach's, like, making fun of the girl with glasses. Mm-hmm. Isn't that funny?
Right.
And then
they picked on the fat girl.
Yeah,
he
but, like,
made
in a
gay jokes.
Right. But, like, yeah, in a 2018 lens, you're like, Zach is a fucking asshole. Like, holy shit. So that your analogy of that and putting Petro right there is pretty on point, actually.
So we're gonna start a new podcast called Petro is an Asshole.
Petro's a fucking asshole.
All
and
right.
It's just us complaining about these handful of episodes over and over.
Great. It's gonna be a winner.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh God, I'm sure.
So if this episode wasn't weird enough already, because we've got an Obi-Wan plot that is completely inconsequential to what's going on with these kids, other than the fact that he said I'll be there and then he's not. They semi-crash land on the planet. And then in their effort to find Hondo, they come across a traveling carnival.
Yep.
Carnies. Priego, is that the guy's name?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, traveling carnival. So they pose as gymnasts, essentially.
Yep.
They're acrobats, they're tumblers or whatever.
Yeah,
and
they fake an act really quickly. Like,
they do a pretty damn good job of it. I'll say that much. So that's their ride across over to Hondo's place, and then eventually we get there, and then they're all make-upped up, and this Priego guy has costumes that fit Ithorians, and doesn't matter the species.
Wookiees. Makeup is involved.
Yeah.
And there's like a full-fledged act that has a plan that gets executed to like get Hondo to a specific spot because they need to get Ahsoka's lightsabers off of Hondo, which they somehow know he will have.
Well, they see them,
but then
beforehand.
How do they?
I don't think the plan was to take the lightsabers, but I think they saw the lightsabers, so it's like, okay, along the way we have to do this also.
But it's still, again, convenient that they work Hondo into the act. So they play as the guys of like, we need an audience member, and then they go straight to Hondo.
And it seems like so Hondo has like these two Twi'lek servants.
Yes,
they're probably forced into servitude.
Right.
I don't think these two are there of their own volition, nor do I think they are compensated for their time groveling at Hondo's feet. Okay.
Right.
But they almost seem to be in on it because they're like, "Oh, come with us, we'll take you."
I agree. It was weird. It was a weird characterization of these two because I agree with you that I was confused for a second where these Twi'leks came from, and why they also like with almost unprompted just went straight to Hondo and was like, "Hey, you're in the act now. Come on."
Well,
over.
So they were flanking him, right? You know, it's like Ludacris's bitches or whatever. And so they were there, and the younglings come up. I don't remember. It was I guess it was like Katuni that comes up and is like, "Hey, we need somebody in we need an audience member."
Right.
And she's like, "You," and then that's when the Twi'leks are like, "Yeah, come with us. We'll put you in the show. You're gonna be in the show." And this whole thing is a ruse to not only steal the lightsabers, because that totally happens in front of everyone,
right?
And should have been caught. But they also get Hondo to stand like on the end of this teeter-totter, but actually catapult type deal,
right?
And then Biff jumps off the top of the essentially what would be the inside of the big top of the circus,
right,
and hits the other end of the board, and lo and behold, Hondo goes flying and then just crashes into some other shit on the other side of the bar, and he gets up and he's like, "That was fucking awesome."
Yep. And then at this point they just grab Ahsoka and go.
Yep. They use their lightsaber to cut her binders off, and they're on the move. And then
run it out.
They're on the run, and do they have some sort of transportation at this point? Do they steal a ship or something?
Not yet. So like there is a small fight that they put up.
Okay.
But then they do find like a speeder, and they're like, "Get on the speeder, let's go." And then that's when they fully escape.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow they like incapacitate like all of the other modes of transportation or something. It's something weird. Like some speeders take off, but don't. They cut down a couple of the speeders or something like that.
Yeah, Priego definitely is like, "Oh, we're fucked." He's gonna be pissed. Like, everybody out, and real quickly packs up his carnival, which I guess he could have done, seeing as like the opening and closing act to the carnival were these random kids that he picked up in the desert on the way over there.
Yep.
So he grabs his shit and bails out. It's kind of reminiscent of when Hondo dropped off his all the
rocket,
the fucking shoulder rockets on Onderon, and was like, "Oh, there's blasters and droids. I'm out of here."
Yeah.
So, yep, Carnival's gone. There's, like you said, there's a little scuffle, I guess.
Right.
And then one of the less drunk pirates is like, "Hey, those are those Jedi kids." Slight pursuit. And then when they're fully on the run, somebody contacts Gnodi on the ship and is like, "Yo, get the ship ready." And
it's time to go.
There is like a brief moral here where I think Katuni is like, "Sorry we disobeyed orders," and Ahsoka's like, "Hey, I learned from my master that sometimes doing what is right means bending the rules." And then they do the call to Gnodi, and then cue loud music, Iris out. That one's it.
That's it.
That one's in the bag.
Yep. Oh boy.
We got Carnival, Saved by the Bell, drunk Hondo episode.
Yeah.
With Obi-Wan in the background.
And Grievous, of all things, too.
So,
yeah.
What do you think about this one, man?
I didn't like this one.
Okay.
I didn't like it.
How come?
It wasn't terrible. I think if I was just like binging this show, you know, and I was just like going one after the other, like I would have liked the other two. I would have been like, this is fine, but like enjoyed it much less than the other ones.
Okay.
But with our ability to sit here and analyze this thing, I didn't like this one. It's just not good. The A plot, B plot thing didn't work for me. The fact that they have almost nothing to do with one another. Then you plop in traveling circus.
Yeah, the traveling circus is by far the most bizarre thing in this episode.
Yeah, it's so random. Like there's so many weird, like new, out of nowhere developments in this episode.
Okay.
That throw me off.
Okay.
Again, by no means is this a terrible episode, but I just like definitely was watching this with just sort of dumbfounded. Right?
Yeah.
Just like, oh, okay, I guess this is where we're going. And again, like the idea that this was a potential backdoor pilot is very concerning to me. Like if we're gonna get stories on this level of coincidence and
very
confusion
coincidental
and just convenience, you know.
This episode should be called Geographical Coincidence.
Right. Or really just like a convenient thing happened on the way to the forum. Like,
nice.
You know?
Clever. So I mostly agree with most of the things that you said.
Mm-hmm.
This episode is very convenient. It's very kind of, these things are happening. Right. Definitely this whole Obi-Wan bit has nothing to do with anything else. Where I differ is that I enjoyed this one more than the last one. So this is part 3. So part 1 to me was passable. Part 2 I thought was better. Part 3 was better than part 2. Like, I'm enjoying these more and more.
Okay.
Even with the A plot, B plot not having anything to do with each other. Again, I got that nostalgia from like season 1 and 2 of the Clone Wars where it had that kind of structure. I liked that. That little bit of reminiscing of the less serious Clone Wars. I think for me elevated this episode. The entire thing is bonkers.
Yeah.
You described it as not terrible, and in giving it a thumbs down. I give it a thumbs up with the description of it's not great.
Right.
So it's like it hovers like right in that middle where I think depending on your mood, this one, like you may sit down and watch this and be like, oh, that was fun. Like we have some crazy bonkers traveling fucking carnival for no fucking reason.
I completely agree with that assessment. Like I said, I think under normal television watching circumstances, if I'm just sitting and I'm trying to get through Clone Wars, like I'm somebody who in 2020 has never seen Clone Wars, and I just make it past this episode, by no means would I consider this a bad episode. And I would say it's I could almost give it a passable grade under normal circumstances.
Right.
But if I have to make a decision, is this episode good or bad?
Sure.
It's going down for me, right?
That is what we do. I would really find it amusing to find somebody out there that hasn't seen Clone Wars but kind of has a little bit of, at least if they knew who Ahsoka, who Hondo, who Grievous, and who Obi-Wan were, I'd be like, all right, let's sit down. We're watching this together. Because I know they'd be like, what the fuck is going on? What the hell is this show
what is
about?
This show?
Like, the guy from the Millennium Falcon ride is traveling carnival, but he kidnapped this Jedi, like,
and is potentially going to kill her. Like, this is the funny thing to me. Again, like, we discussed this a little bit last week. Like, I don't have a problem with the snap in characterization. It's still just, it throws me for a loop. But by and large, that most people, that there are going to be way more people who, under normal non-COVID circumstances, have or would have gone on that ride,
and or interacted with Hondo in that capacity, and
that is their introduction. That is their introduction to Hondo. That was or will be their introduction to Hondo.
Right.
So the idea that if somebody were curious of who the fuck is that guy, where did he come from, why is he there, and then like a nerd could be like, oh, well, actually he is an established character in the Star Wars lore via
go
the
watch
Clone
season
Wars.
5 episode 7.
Right. Yeah, via the Clone Wars, and then you have to like you watch these 2 episodes and you're like, that's the guy? That's the guy they're going to put front and center on this ride? The guy who was ready to kill children to make profit? Like, okay. So that part definitely tickles me. And it still tickles me here. But yeah, man, like at the same time, this episode is sort of like that weird, for me, it is like one of those weird episodes that this isn't the right word, but it sort of cheapens Star Wars a little bit, where to me, story is always front and center with Star Wars, right? And I like Star Wars least when it becomes spectacle over story. And that is not to lead towards saying that is what happens here. But there is sort of...
It's definitely not spectacular.
Right. Yeah, definitely not. But there is this other sort of way about that where there are versions of Star Wars, such as a lot of season 1 of Clone Wars, where they're playing to the lowest common denominator, right? Mm-hmm. So they're just throwing everything they got at it, right?
Right.
And they're just grab bagging at shit and just mixing it up, and they're like, oh, this is just gonna be a weird, silly, fun episode. We're just gonna do a silly, fun, weird episode, right? So when you kind of get to that level, like, and I'm not, again, this by no means reaches those depths, but the fact that we have A plot, B plot, and then the A plot has its own subplot, and then A plot also starts introducing midway through carnies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is where like that weird like grab bag of tone and again convenience just is just bizarre. It's really bizarre to kind of think that of all things Jedi Padawans go through, that somehow dealing with carnies is something that we know has happened. Right? Does that make sense? Like, it occupies that same part of my brain where I was just like, okay, Geonosian zombies, I guess, is fully in canon now. Like, this is...
I liked the Geonosian zombies, and I like...
Carnies.
Yeah, I like the Carnies
Florum
here.
Carnies.
So, we have a Doug that is in charge, and he has a questionable... Don't know if it's an actual mustache, or if this is like a nasal insert thing that he's got going on. Mm-hmm. And he speaks... clear and articulate basic
Completely, yeah.
As the runner of this carnival. And I think an even funnier thing is that he's been to Hondo's before and it didn't go well, and now he's returning for like another run. And he just so happened to pick these kids up, and when Hondo gets there, he's like playing with a skull, and he's like, hopefully it's better than last time because I killed those guys, and does like the finger across the throat.
Yeah. This episode is bizarre, like definitely bizarre, and
that's what I like about it. I think.
Yeah,
I would watch. I would watch this one again.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be upset to get through this one again. Again, my criticisms are not trying to thrash this episode. It's just that things are weird in this one, man. Things are so weird in this one. And for me, I'm just on the other side of reacting to it the way you did.
For sure.
Like, that's all it is. By no means was this episode bad. It was just it was the most bizarre side of Star Wars we've seen in quite a while. So
I would agree with that 100%. Next week we have an episode called Unnecessary Bond. There is nothing that has happened this week or the previous 2 weeks that gives me any inclination as to who is bonding and why it is necessary.
Yeah, I don't know where we're going from here, because like they're riding off into the sunset. They're still sort of an open end here where they didn't get back to the ship. We don't know if they're like these kids are getting back to the Jedi Temple. Like, is there gonna be some other weird complication? Do the Carnies strike back? You know,
man, that would have been a good episode title.
The Carnies strike back.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. I think the open-endedness of this, knowing that there's something coming, makes me like this episode more than the previous two. Because even though last week, like we ended with Ahsoka, sucked out the door, and the kids were blasted off by themselves. Like there was still some like finality to that, I guess. And this seems like a cut to commercial, not a see you next week.
I'll disagree with you a little bit. Like, I still felt like, at least for this week, like this episode, this arc here specifically, does kind of feel wrapped up. Like, the goal, rescue Ahsoka.
Okay.
End of episode, rescued Ahsoka.
I was gonna say, how can you tell? Because like Obi-Wan had his deal, and then the carnival had its deal. But yeah, you're right.
Like if the main
goal was
the main
rescue
plot,
Ahsoka, and we have all parts have been reunited.
Yeah. So for that little bit, but yeah, the fact that because like there is no cliffhanger in this one the way there was last week, which I don't think we've mentioned, but thinking about it now. Last week's episode was probably the best the show has ever handled an open-ended cliffhanger.
Okay.
Like, probably ever.
I know you have strong feelings about cliffhangers and what constitutes a cliffhanger and what constitutes an incomplete story.
Right, yeah. So, like, in terms of, like, that plot was done, escape pirate, or pirates attack, escape pirates, they escape pirates, right?
Uh-huh. Man, that was done in such a clever way too. Like, really, like seconds left to go.
Right.
In the episode.
So that's why, like, I did like the way that one concluded in terms of, yes, there are open threads, but like the episode itself comes to a natural close, right?
Okay. Cool.
And here, there are some weird, like, with so many weird open threads, it's like I don't know if the next episode is going to involve Obi-Wan or if Hondo's going to try and fight back again, but it would just seem foolish to reintroduce that.
You know, like with a title like A Necessary Bond, I feel like this is implying that we need to have two parties that would not normally work together. So that makes me feel like Hondo and Ahsoka are going to like come together for some reason. But then, you know, it's like with all the school children, right? All the younglings, like they're going to have to bond with somebody.
I'm assuming that they're going to have to form
to
with
bond
the title
with
like
each other.
Yeah, that's my guess. My guess is that they're going
to be doing that all right, though.
Something tells me that they're going to regress Petro one more time. Is that they're going to make Petro some sort of insufferable asshole one last time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll be like Katuni and Petro finally coming to like full final understanding of one another. That's my out of nowhere guess. So that's my prediction right now.
Okay, are we gonna see Yoda? Is he still trapped in the ice cave?
Nah, yes, but he's training the next batch. That's what's happening. So
gotcha.
Yeah, man.
Do you got anything else for this week?
No, man. That's it. That's everything I got on this.
I feel like even though you gave this one a thumbs down and I gave it a thumbs up, our opinions are actually pretty close together on this thing.
I agree. I know.
And,
I agree with you.
It's our interpretation of our opinions is just skewed
they're just right
in opposite directions
on
the scale.
No, we're I think I agree. We're at we both feel the exact same thing about this episode. We're just coming to final conclusions on the opposite ends.
Yeah. I'm all right with it. So
I agree. I don't hate this episode. It was just weird. It's just freaking weird.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
There's my Star Wars Resistance one-word wrap-up of this one is bizarre.
Yeah. No.
So
close this out, man.
Next week, actually episode 100 of the Clone Wars. So,
yes.
A Necessary Bond, season 5, episode 9. In the meantime, let us know what you thought about this episode. Do that by going over to notthenerds.com and clicking on any of our social media links, or heading through notthenerds.com over to our YouTube feeds, where you can quickly interact with us via comments there. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Tell a friend. Bring them around to the nerd side. You know what I mean? We got 3 people behind the scenes. Kevin at They Call Me Caleb on Twitter, our graphic artist. Lindsay, our musician, shall we say?
Yeah.
She put together our intro-outro music. Thanks, Lindsay. You can talk to her via email, strangefantasymusic@gmail.com. And then Anthony, who put together our website, at Blue the Beard on Twitter. Reach out to them, tell them how great they have done. We wouldn't be here without them. But anyway, I've been Kevin.
I've been Lorenzo.
These aren't the nerds you're looking for.
Bye-bye.